Welcome to today's KMWorld webinar, brought to you by Adlib. I'm Mary D. Ojala, Editor-in-Chief at KMWorld Magazine, and I will be the moderator for today's broadcast. Our presentation today is titled, Improve LLM Accuracy with RAG. Now, before we get started, let me explain how you can be a part of this presentation. There will be a question and answer session, so if you have a question during the presentation, just type it into the Ask a Question box provided and click on the Submit button. We will try to get to as many questions as possible, but if your question has not been selected during the show, you will receive an email response to it within a few days. And now let me introduce our speaker for today, Jason Jakob, Chief Architect Officer, Adlib. Welcome to the broadcast, Jason.
Thanks, Mary D. It's a pleasure to be with you today. As Mary D mentioned, my name is Jason Jakob. I'm the lead architect, engineer, and over AI at Adlib. We have offices in Toronto, Canada, and Silicon Valley in the US, and have virtual employees mainly in North America and Europe. Adlib's been around for 25 years, and I've been with Adlib for about 5 of those years. In this presentation, I'd like to talk about some specific strategies to make LLMs more reliable when working with documents within your own organization. And for those of you that may be new to AI and RAG, the definition of RAG is retrieval augmented generation. And in simple terms, it just means it's about searching for chunks of document data in a database, then passing those results to a large language model like ChatGPT to question the content grounded on your own organization's documents. And this provides a more complete and relative result to your original inquiry. So let's get into it here. Let's first talk about how unstructured data is kind of a #1 blocker for AI projects. Capgemini reports that 14% of manufacturers call their smart factory deployments as a success, which is pretty dismal. And this is due to data readiness being one of their top challenges. Gartner says that 60% of AI projects lacking AI-ready data will be abandoned by 2026. That's a huge loss of income and R&D. And then IIoT World states that 40% of manufacturers flag supplier format chaos or non-standardized docs as the biggest blocker of AI at their organizations. And then finally, Forbes says that 80% of the time spent on AI projects is devoted to data preparation tasks. So, let's be frank, AI RAG implementations are easier said than done. We can see from these polls that there are a lot of misconceptions around implementing AI, especially for organizational content. C-level execs assume that simply by employing AI generally in their work streams, that it will magically produce the results that they want. And I'd like to talk about the top 5 myths that contribute to the failure of AI projects, along with recommendations of how to mitigate those risks. And I'll provide some concrete examples along the way. So myth #1, RAG will fix LLM accuracy. Well, the truth is that RAG reduces hallucinations by grounding answers on your documents, but its accuracy depends entirely on the quality of the source documents and how that content is chunked for search purposes. So poorly structured or context-less chunks still lead to misleading or missing answers. So some of those challenges of standard RAG pipelines are, random and fixed size chunking splits. So traditionally people would just chunk, 500 characters at a time and maybe overlap between chunks a little bit, which spreads the context across multiple pieces. And this causes incomplete results coming back for the LLM to process. Also, metadata is often missing, making it hard to connect related facts. And retrieval accuracy drops when documents are more semi-structured or unstructured or technical in nature. And then what Adlib has done is we've developed methodologies and processes to process those documents in a way that will improve the results that come back from your RAG searches. So we employ image and entity preprocessing. So if your document contains scanned images or tables or other types of images and charts, those are processed individually, deskewed, upscaled, as well as we provide hybrid OCR and LLM pre-processing. So traditionally OCR doesn't have the context with it. So we include the context with it to better improve the OCR results. Additionally, we do metadata enrichment. So we'll identify claim numbers and lot IDs and subsections to be able to relate that data together contextually. We also do entity-aware chunking, which means we keep the tables, figures, and sections intact. We don't separate them out so that they all come back to the LLM intact and provide full data, full contextual information to that question. And then additionally, we do hybrid vector and metadata storage. So this supports on the search side doing semantic searches, keyword searches, metadata filtering, nearest neighbor searches. So we get a whole lot more data coming back after this pre-processing than you would in a normal standard RAG pipeline. It reduces hallucinations, is more compliant, and it's more useful for industry-grade processes. So let me provide an industry example here. In life sciences manufacturing, we have a client that sometimes will conduct a problem investigation and searches for a batch number. Well, previously they couldn't do that, but now they get results from even tables embedded within the document. And if the content references other documents, such as CAD diagrams, we get that information back as in the search as well. So much richer information is returned that can be used in audits and investigations. And then additionally, the citations, because the sources of those documents are recorded or linked, we can provide citations and links to those source documents to make it easier to provide proof. Myth number 2. IDP and human-in-the-loop are enough. The truth is that they help, but without AI-ready preprocessing and validation of that data at scale, enterprises still face scaling problems and downstream accuracy gaps. So Adlib goes beyond the IDP. So what we do is we provide taxonomy-driven extraction. So first of all, we need to classify documents into some sort of a taxonomy, for instance, industries such as insurance, life sciences, and manufacturing. And after classification, then we can identify the key data fields that need to be extracted, and regardless of the document format. And then additionally, we automate the validation rules. And these are used to enforce compliance. And these are based on one or more of the key fields and can be used. We can actually provide a lookup into customer databases or public industry DBs to validate them. So one example would be in prescriptions, for instance. If we're pre-processing a prescription, after extracting all the data from the prescription, we would then apply validation rules on, is there a patient name, is there a patient phone number and an address? And also, is the prescriber information there and their ID number? And so we can then take that data and look up into a database to confirm that it actually is a patient. All that can be done before it even gets to a human in the loop. So what it does is it reduces the review costs of the data and allows organizations to scale. So the outcome is that Adlib delivers true accuracy outcomes using that pre-processed data, and we can automatically provide that information. Another industry example here is that and we have a major insurance client that came to us during the RFQ stage with a very complex classification hierarchy for their documents. And they were currently spending a huge amount of time creating templates for extraction and then manually checking all that work. And this resulted in a large reviewer workforce. Additionally, if a document format changed, it required hours of template work to fix the issue. Maybe regex, maybe drawing bounding boxes and things like that. But Adlib was able to provide a hybrid OCR LLM extraction model which no longer cared about the position of the elements on the page, which reduced and eliminated the need for creating the templates, reduced in engineering work, and then additionally, with the automated validation of the extracted data, we were able to auto-process more claims with a faster SLA. So the human in the loop review efforts were now focusing on just the claims that with validation exceptions. Myth number 3. Our DMS or ECM handles all the documents, and when I say DMS, I mean things such as OpenText, Kara, Viva, and so on. These systems are built to handle structure and compliant inputs. They're not in the business of processing unstructured data. They're not transformers. And it's important for these systems that the input layer be standardized for machine readiness upstream before it gets into the platform. And in a recent manufacturing summit by IoT World, Adlib polled the audience about their biggest blockers to scaling AI at their plants. And 2 leading blockers emerged, each taking about 40% of the votes. They were focused on supplier format chaos or non-standardized docs, and system integration and latency issues. And this signals that the formatting of the documents, extracting relevant entities, and getting it to where it needs to go is the leading blocker in scaling AI solutions. So what does Adlib do for the DMS? Well, Adlib integrates with the DMS, SharePoint, OpenText, etc. We pull a document from the DMS, we add all that transformation. So we do the hybrid OCR enrichment. We do the extraction, the conversion into structured data, metadata. So then we can push that down to AI RAG pipelines. And additionally, we can push that back into the DMS, that document that's been embellished and enhanced, push that back into the DMS for further use. So Adlib essentially extends the life of the existing DMSs and adds missing AI RAG search regardless of what the platform where the source data came from. After Adlib processes the document and puts the new information into the document and pushes it back to the DMS, we then provide a separate AI chat outside of the DMS that can be used to access all that data. Myth number 4, OCR is a solved commodity. Well, the truth is that basic OCR is solved, but extracting context-rich compliant data from CAD drawings, scans, handwritten notes, and ever-changing document formats is a huge challenge for OCR vendors. Highly regulated enterprises need multi-engine, enterprise-grade, intelligent hybrid OCR solutions that can handle tables and handwriting and vector graphics and stamps and watermarks and coming from all various data locations within the document. And then, embedded or built-in OCR utilities miss that critical data. And in pharma manufacturing, the current level of accuracy is unacceptable because it causes too much manual work, compliance risks, and increases costs. So essentially, by employing a hybrid OCR and LLM capability, and yes, we're using LLM right in the pipeline with the OCR, hand in hand, looking at the image data as well as the text data to try and get better quality OCR out. So the OCR helps us anchor the structure, the tables, the forms, and headers, whereas the LLMs interpret the context, meaning, and relationships. and we can actually repair data that's missed by OCR. Sometimes you'll get OCR and there's all these squiggly, weird characters that come out. Well, with LLM running through the process at the same time and combining the data, we can resolve those bad characters with good text. And combine that delivers a pixel perfect fidelity with semantic accuracy for our searches down the road. Now, another customer story here, a pharmacy customer was processing 50 million documents per year. That's faxes, scans, and emails. Adlib system automated the classification and extraction, applied auto validation on it to ensure that we had the right prescriber and prescriber. And as a result, it reduced manual review by about 20%. And that resulted in about $1.4 million a year in reduced labor costs. So, and additionally, engineering replaced 10 different SDK toolkits and technologies in their homegrown solution with a single solution. So it really reduces the cost and increases the savings through the automation. Myth number 5, AI failure is about weak models. Well, the truth here is weak inputs are the problem, not weak models. So the number one reason AI initiatives fail is because we've had bad data going in. MIT found that 95% of the Gen AI pilots had no measurable ROI because of the input data issues, causing poor models. AI models and LLMs are powerful, but again, garbage in equals garbage out. The bottleneck is upstream in document preparation. Fixing inputs can generate 3 to 5 times ROI in downstream AI workflows. So here, Adlib ensures clean, validated inputs through pre-processing pipelines and reduces the manual labor of human in the loop so that enterprises can finally trust their LLM and RAG outputs. So, we have a bit of a fragmented landscape when I'm talking about OCR, IDP, and DMS. OCR is, it's kind of siloed. It's focusing on character recognition. That can be sometimes very configuration heavy and have no context for data linkage. IDP platforms are great at forms, but are, again, configuration heavy. They're weak on unstructured, scientific, and handwritten docs. DMSs are just really providing the storage of the documents and audit trail capability. So we've just, as we've discussed these common myths and challenges that each of these technologies represent, they are essentially silos unto themselves because of that, they can't do the job required for intelligent document processing on their own. They need a coordination between them. And the majority of the organizations in heavily regulated industries, they require that more homogeneous coordination. So if we look at on the left-hand side, we can see that those 3 platforms, traditionally you've got human at the center of them, moving data from one to the other or validating it at each stage. And this is very error prone and takes time and is costly. While conversely on the right-hand side, we see Adlib interconnects all of those platforms and data together, as well as providing some intelligent pre-processing and validation. And only the human in the loop only receives those tasks where automation exceptions occurred. We can see a huge savings in that regard. So finally, if we talk about the entire pipeline, Adlib uniquely provides all the solutions needed that we've discussed while leveraging existing investments in infrastructure. So we can ingest documents from the DMS, Documentum, OpenText, Cara, Viva, and we run the document through our critical pipeline, which is required before the AI RAG storage happens. So here we can see that in the pipeline are many different things. We've got custom workflows. We've got pre-processing and repairing and upscaling of the images. We've got intelligent OCR to fix the bad characters, and LLM with its context coming back to form a great piece of textual information from the document. We've got the process of classifying the document and referencing it against industry taxonomies to determine what the key extraction values and the key data are that need to come out of it, which again form the linkage between the various documents. For instance, a claim number might have 10 different documents that flow through the system, all having a claim number within that you want to link. We've got critical validation happening with auto lookups. And then only when those exceptions happen are they routed to human in the loop. From there, once human in the loop has confirmed everything and maybe fixed what's the exception, we can then generate that metadata that's required for downstream processes. We can augment that document and push it back into the DMS platform. So what we find is that Adlib provides 3 major outputs that are critical to making this work. Number 1 is the enriched document is placed back in the DMS as a new rendition. And that enriched document has a very high quality OCR layer. It also has metadata included in it and so on for future use downstream. Number 2, the output is an AI RAG storage in the platform, and therefore you have a separate chat interface to chat with your document or chat across documents. And then the last thing is that the extracted data can be delivered and inserted directly into the downstream line of business system through powerful customizable workflows. So we do have workflows for all the major things such as Oracle databases and things like that, Salesforce and so on, and then they can be customized as needed by the client. I've given you a few industry examples. Here are some more of our customers in the life sciences industry, both direct and through our partners. We have processed billions of documents, provided high fidelity renditions that are regulatory body compliant, and we make it all searchable through leading edge processes and AI RAG technology. So what possibly could there be more? Well, on our roadmap, we see one key thing that will make it even better, and that is GraphRAG. So if you're familiar with a RAG database, it's like a knowledge database based on the key contextual elements of the data within it, and it can draw a chart and link all of those ideas and relationships between the data. And so we're always innovating, and our next iteration of AI RAG will include GraphRAG, which builds that knowledge graph matrix, and it's storing the interrelationships between the documents and the parts of the documents. And what does that allow you to do? Well, it allows you to do deep research, which can be used for discovery, uncover problems in manufacturing processes, for instance. It can ensure audit readiness. It can detect vendor non-compliance, and many more things. From here, you can build purpose-built AI agents which can perform specific organizational tasks. And all of this is driven by and enabled by the data in your own documents properly being pre-processed and exposed and stored for LLMs to take advantage of. And that pretty much concludes the presentation. Probably take some questions at this point.
We can indeed take some questions at this point. And let me remind people that if you do have questions, you can still put them into that Ask a Question box and click on the Submit button. Let me start with this one. Actually, I was quite fascinated by your myth about OCR, because I remember OCR from way, way back in the day. And to be honest, I actually thought that was a solved issue. So I've learned that it is not quite a solved issue. Good to know. But the question that came in is, A lot of organizations already use OCR and IDP tools. What makes Adlib's approach different, and why isn't traditional OCR or IDP enough for RAG or generative AI workflows?
Yeah, why isn't it traditional OCR or IDP enough? Well, I guess in a perfect world, you could get the entirety of your document library. You could give it, if you could, give it all to an LLM and have it return the specific data you wanted to search on. That would be great. But that's impossible. LLMs today have limitations on the amount of data or tokens that can be processed in a single query. Also, there's constraints on contextual memory, and this poses a big problem. So Adlib's invested a lot of resources to solving this problem, and it all revolves around this, repair, pre-processing, chunking it in a specific way where you can get the most possible chunks returned to your search query so that the LLM can take that and translate it into, suitable results. And that requires coordination of data at a level that fragmented systems, OCR, IDP, and so on, just can't achieve on their own. Adlib's got to be there to bridge the gap.
Okay. All right. Very good. Very good. We have another question here. Which information architecture or taxonomy standards are applied in the context, meaning, and relationships by the LLMs? That's a question that could take you probably hours to answer.
Yeah. Essentially, the taxonomy standards have to be outside of the LLMs, meaning, for instance, in the Adlib platform, you would have all those taxonomies that are related to the industry. So you know what fields to pull out. So, for instance, an RX, a prescription, you know that all the base fields that you need in order to provide a prescription. Well, that information is understood by the LLM, but if you were to say, what fields do I need on a prescription, it might give you a subset of all the fields that are really required for a business process itself to handle everything. So you can't rely on the LLM for the taxonomy itself. That has to be developed through partners, through industry, through clients, through experience. Once you have those taxonomies defined, then you run your documents through that to make sure that all the relevant fields that you need are extracted as metadata. And then at that point in the search process, that metadata can be used as the matching and so on to get back the proper chunks that you need so that the LLM can then take that and provide you with a good answer.
Okay. Good answer. You mentioned that RAG still depends heavily on the quality of the underlying documents. Could you elaborate on how Adlib's pre-processing and intelligent chunking actually improves RAG accuracy in practice?
Yeah, that's a good one. The accuracy is directly affected by the number of most relevant chunks that come back from that search. So, and the reason why is because, like, if I had a 5-page document, and that document talked about 5 different things, and I did a search for just one of those items, then RAG would normally come back with just one of those 5 items within the document. And so the LLM couldn't figure out how the interconnectedness of that one item versus all 5, how they interconnected and how they interrelated and were important. And so by this pre-processing and this chunking, what we're doing is every chunk, actually we're pre-appending to that chunk a small snippet of context of that chunk within the whole document. And so now what we get back is more chunks, and then therefore the LLM now, because it has more data, it understands and can figure out the interconnectedness and provide that extra information. So the challenge of the documents is diverse, because every document, they're very diverse and complex. You've got completely unstructured documents, you've got structured documents. So it's very important that that whole chunking process is handling that particular type of document correctly, so that they're all interrelated and the accuracy goes up.
Yeah. This is a related question. You may have answered this one already. I'm not sure. What requirements for Adlib intelligent RAG to integrate? What are the requirements for Adlib intelligence RAG to integrate with an LLM model? I mean, you're talking about chunking. Is that the major requirement that you're looking at?
Yeah, it's the work that happens before it gets to the LLM. So yeah, first of all, you need to integrate the systems that are already running in the enterprise, the OCR, the IDP, and so on, the DMS. You have to integrate those systems so that all of the information is acquired. It's processed properly and put into storage, and then when your search happens, that's where the LLM comes in. Now, we use LLM in two ways. We use LLM in the pipeline itself because its capability to have contextual understanding of the data that's looking at. So that particular document that we're processing at that point, the LLM can give us insights. And so we'll use that during the time in which we insert it into the database. And then LLM is used at search time so that when all the results come back, it formulates a proper answer for you. Yeah.
This is a great question. At the beginning of the webinar, you gave what is probably the best explanation of what RAG is. Can you state that again and why RAG is so important?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, explanations can be quite complex.
Absolutely.
The simplest explanation of RAG is you're going to take some document data, you're going to separate it into pieces and put it in a database. And the key thing is the way you separate the pieces into the database when you do your search to retrieve all of those pieces is really important. You want them to be the way AI RAG works is it uses all kinds of different technologies when it does its search to get all those chunks out of the database. And it's really key that we get the right chunks with the right question.
Okay. Could you elaborate on how GraphRAG is better than RAG? Presumably, you're using metadata enrichment to index the relevant areas of interest?
Yeah, absolutely. So Adlib's current process is to use the metadata, and metadata comes from various sources. It could be, the document size, where it was ingested from, the department it came from, what manufacturing line it was from. That's the type of metadata that may not be inside the document itself. And then we have extracted data that comes from the contents of the document, like, what was the line number, what was the claim number, what was the employee number, all that information. And all that metadata we're storing with the chunks in the database. So we could actually do search just based on metadata. But next level, GraphRAG, now starts to take all of those metadata items and saying, oh, well, what metadata items from another document are very similar? And maybe another document from another line of business are very similar. And it starts to build that, the linkage in a separate database. So at that point, you can actually do a search on that graph data to bring back more chunk data. Like I mentioned before, it's really important what chunks come back so the LLM's response is the best. AI GraphRAG improves upon that chunks that come back for a wider breadth of results from the LLM.
Well, we've been talking about success. I have a question now about things that don't succeed. What's the biggest AI data architecture mistake that large enterprises make?
Okay, that's a good one. It's very, very common that an organization will run right into, oh, let's build a deep learning model for the data that we need. And so models are super expensive to create. They require subject matter experts. They require data scientists. They require a lot of nicely annotated documents to train on. And then you create this, so you put all this work into it, you create this great model that works with your test documents, your test set. Then you introduce a novel document, and all of a sudden it falls apart. And this exposes a big problem with overfitting while training. People get really excited and they try to do too much with the model, and they overfit the data when they train.
Yeah.
But by contrast, we're finding that a general LLM-based AI implementation can be just as effective as a deep learning model, and improves the chance of success, and it delivers a quicker ROI, and requires but a lot less work, but requires the pre-processing of those documents. Now, additionally, most enterprises will make the mistake of thinking that RAG can fix their data for them, but simply it's not possible by putting a retrieval label over top of their data. It has to be pre-processed and handled properly in order for it to work. So those are the two major things that I see are mistakes that C-level make.
Yeah. Well, this is sort of a related question, I suppose, but this person wants to know the top 5 ways he or she, I don't know, can eliminate HITL work for insurance claims. This is pretty specific, but I'd like to expand it beyond that if you can. So how do you do that?
So some of the things that we can do for insurance claims specifically, but I would say more generally apply to a lot of different industries, is to first of all pre-classify the document so it goes into the right bucket. Because models, AI is really good when you have more defined data. You've got buckets of data that are more specific. So I could say, if this is a fire insurance claim, for instance, I could have an AI model that's really tailored to fire insurance, for instance, or theft, or auto, or health. And so one of the important ways to reduce human in the loop is to get an auto classification system. So you don't have to have users sitting there saying, oh yeah, this belongs to fire, that belongs to theft, and so on. And then once that classification happens, that's where your taxonomy comes into place. So it's really important to develop a taxonomy, if you don't have one already, of everything that needs to be extracted for fire insurance specifically, for instance. Maybe it's a total on an invoice or an estimate or something like that. And then you want to have validation. So number 3 is validation, have auto validation in place. So for instance, I could take the line items of an invoice and make sure they sum up to the total on the invoice. That's one thing. Another thing I could validate is if this invoice is over $5,000, it definitely needs to go to human in the loop right away. Or if it's below, I can auto process it. So 3 is validation. And then number 4 is lookups against the customer database, so against your own records, insurance policies, and so on. So that would be number 4, is doing a lookup and correlating the data back to your own information. I can't think of a number 5 right now, but I think all 4 of those things are really good.
I think 4 would be just fine. I think 5 was probably a random number. Let's just go with 4. Perfect. Right. Okay. If a large document is altered to a new version, how do you manage the indexing of the newer document into RAG and replace the old document?
We have a process.
A related question to that really is about taxonomies, because if you have a taxonomy but things change, don't you need a human in the loop to update the taxonomy?
Those are 2 separate questions, but let me just address this question. So the first one is basically how to identify uniqueness of a document, so that if that same document with a new version comes in, that I don't also submit that newer version document to the platform, and then you could get confusing results back from your RAG because you have 2 separate versions of a document. For instance, a standard operating procedure, an SOP, which has been updated, and we no longer do this, but we do this. Well, we've developed a process whereby when the document comes in, we identify it and create like an ID for the document. This is based on a few things. It's based on, the title of the document, the format of the document, the first page. There's usually identifying items on there. And so we'll come up with a unique ID for that document. And in most cases, when that same document comes through with changes, we're able to identify the same ID. We go and we delete the data out of the AI RAG database first, and then we insert it. So you're always going to have the latest information about that document. And that's configurable and an option.
Okay.
Now your second mentioning about the taxonomy. Yeah, sometimes taxonomy
changes, yeah.
Yeah. And so that's done just in one place, though, and it's applied for millions of documents thereafter. It's not a huge deal.
Not a huge deal. Okay. I think I know some taxonomists who might disagree with you on that, but depends on the situation, I expect.
Mhm.
Let's see here. How quick is the HITL reduced as the LLM is reinforced by human interaction? How long or what cycles until you get to minimal human interactions?
Yeah, so we would start in a company. We would start, somewhere around 50% automation of human in the loop, and over time, as the system learns, as the taxonomies are developed, updated, and as the processes get better, you can see, human in the loop gets reduced over time. So it's a gradual scale. 6 months to a year, you'd probably see 10%, on order of 10% per year of improving. And then there's also AI is changing all the time. It's getting better and better all the time.
Yeah.
So you have that benefit too. Once you have the system in place and it's AI based, when there's a new model that comes out, ChatGPT goes from 3 to 4 to 5, the model becomes better at what it does, and its accuracy is better. Hallucination goes down. So you're going to get those. You're going to capture those benefits along the way, without an increase in expenditures.
Yeah, it's changing so fast. It's really hard to keep up with.
Mm-hmm.
Does Adlib use both native integration and APIs?
Our interface to Adlib is, if you wanted to integrate, there's two main interfaces. One of them is REST API, and the other one is MCP. That's something we're releasing with this release, MCP. So if you're starting to get into agentic workflows, you can actually address Adlib's functionality and capabilities through MCP. And then because we have custom workflows, we use underneath the covers N8N, which is a very open source, popular workflow system. And there are tons, hundreds and thousands of integrations that we can connect to push downstream data to.
Could you repeat what that last one was? I think you had an acronym there.
N8N is a workflow system which is open source and allows you to, we have all the workflows there that we deliver, and then our professional services works with your company's IT staff, and we can customize those workflows to whatever their need is. Or the IT staff can just take those and customize them as they like. It's all drag and drop capability.
Excellent. Okay.
No code.
No code. Okay. Excuse me. When customers are using Adlib or a pre-processing pipeline, is there already a use case identified, or can that be built generally as a foundation for multiple use cases?
Yeah, it is a foundation for multiple use cases, our whole pipeline. And then because we have the post workflow system, once the document's gone through the process, or at any point in that process, we can customize it and say, no, this customer wants to skip this or wants to bring in a customized process. We can do that through the workflow system. Yeah, very flexible.
Okay, flexibility is good. Is good. Let's see here. There's a question about vector databases, but it's not very specific. Is there something you'd like to say about vector databases?
Well, I could mention that we're using PostgreSQL underneath the covers, so it doesn't carry a heavy burden license. And we're using the PG vector module that sits on top of that for all of the vector capability in the database.
Okay.
Might be too technical, but
well, you know, you really never know how technical people are. It's hard to tell from looking at them, and of course we can't see them. So, well, that is all the time we have for questions today, and we certainly had a lot of them. That's really good. But if we did not get to your question, we do apologize. And as I said earlier, answers will be forthcoming via email. And I would like to thank our speaker today, Jason Jakob, Chief Architect Officer Adlib. If you would like a copy of the presentation, you can download it once the event is archived. If you would like to review the event or send it to a colleague, please use the same URL that you used for today's event. It will be archived for 90 days. And you will also receive an email once the archive is posted. This does conclude our broadcast for today. Thank you again for joining us.